Ambassador Kirill adjusted his chromatic scales, watching them shift from azure to a warm golden hue that humans supposedly found trustworthy. The Federation's xenopsychologists had prepared him extensively for this moment, but something about the humans in the United Nations chamber made his scales itch beneath their carefully maintained color. "We come in peace," he announced in perfect English, his translator implant rendering his clicks and whistles into smooth syllables. "The Zix-Tari Federation welcomes Earth into the galactic community." The practiced words felt hollow in his fourth mouth, even as his primary mouth smiled with calculated warmth. The human delegates responded with polite applause, but Carl noticed their eyes. They weren't wide with wonder or blazed with awe like other primitive species when first contacted. These humans looked analytical, especially the small female in the front row, Dr. Sarah Chen, according to his briefing, who seemed to be studying his color changes with unsettling intensity. During the formal reception that followed, Kirill's unease grew. The standard diplomatic approach, a careful mix of technological displays and subtle psychological manipulation, wasn't producing the expected results. The humans showed interest in Zix-Tari achievements, but not the profound reverence that the Federation's superiority usually inspired. The breaking point came during what was supposed to be a carefully orchestrated demonstration of Zix-Tari computational superiority. Kirill's aide had set up their quantum interface, preparing to solve what their research indicated was an impossible mathematical problem by human standards: the optimization of 11-dimensional space for faster-than-light travel. A human child, barely 10 cycles old according to their measurements, wandered over to watch. Before the demonstration could begin, she pointed at the holographic display. "Oh, you're using the Kardashev-Wilson method. That's cool, but wouldn't it be faster to just fold the 7th dimension through itself? Like this." The girl reached through the hologram, adjusting variables with casual ease. Kirill watched in horror as the simulation reconfigured, solving in seconds what would have taken their systems hours. His eyed scales shifted to a mortified grey. "Interesting approach," Dr. Chen said, appearing beside the child. "Lisa's always had a knack for spatial mathematics. We find many of our children think quite creatively about higher dimensions." Her smile seemed genuine, but Carl detected something else in her expression: pride, but not surprise. Later that evening, in the secure confines of the Zix-Tari embassy ship, Kirill received even more disturbing news. The routine genetic scans they'd been performing on the human delegates revealed patterns that defied their xenobiological models. The diversity within human DNA was unprecedented, suggesting an evolutionary path that should have taken millions more years than Earth's recorded history allowed. "Run the tests again," Kirill ordered, all 4 of his mouths set in grim lines. "We have, Ambassador," 12 times. His chief scientist's scales had gone completely white, a sign of deep distress. "The humans, they're not what we expected. Their genetic structure shows signs of engineering so advanced we can barely recognize it as artificial. But it's old, incredibly old." Kirill moved to the observation window, watching Earth rotate below them. The Federation had encountered hundreds of species, uplifted dozens into their carefully managed hierarchy of civilizations. But something about humanity wasn't fitting their usual patterns. The child's casual brilliance, the strange genetics, the way they seemed to intuitively grasp concepts that should have been centuries beyond them. "Maintain our current diplomatic protocols," he finally ordered, "but quietly expand our research parameters. I want to know everything about human history, especially anything unusual." and get me direct access to the Federation's sealed archives. I need to verify something about the old legends of the first ones. His scales shifted to deep purple, a color of deep concern that humans couldn't perceive. Krell had a growing suspicion that the Federation's first contact protocols had just encountered their greatest challenge, a primitive species that might not be primitive at all. Dr. Venner pressed her hand against the perfectly smooth wall of the Martian cavern, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with excitement. After 3 months of excavation, her team had finally broken through to what their sensors indicated was a vast chamber beneath the red planet's surface. The scanning equipment had suggested something impossible, a pocket of preserved atmosphere, untouched for hundreds of thousands of years. Temperature holding at 294 Kelvin, her assistant, Rix, reported through their sealed environment suits. Atmospheric composition. This can't be right. It's matching Earth's ancient atmosphere profiles. Venner's spots flickered faster. Proceed with entry protocols. Full containment procedures. The chamber's seal parted with a hiss that shouldn't have been possible after so many millennia. As their lights penetrated the darkness, Venner's respiratory filters struggled to process her sharp intake of breath. The chamber stretched for hundreds of meters, its walls lined with transparent pods arranged in precise geometric patterns. By the first ones, Rix whispered, his spots going dark with shock. Those are stasis pods, and they're human. Hundreds of pods, each containing a perfectly preserved human body. The technology sustaining them had failed long ago, but the preservation was remarkable. Venner approached the nearest pod, her scientific detachment warring with growing disbelief. The pod's design was elegant, impossibly advanced, far beyond current Zixtari capabilities. These readings suggest an age of approximately 300,000 Earth years, Rix said, his voice shaking. But that's impossible. Human civilization is barely 10,000 years old. Venner's attention caught on something else, writing etched into the pod's surface. Not hieroglyphics or primitive symbols, but complex mathematical formulas. Some she recognized, others were beyond her comprehension. Rix, transmit everything to my personal database. Everything. She moved deeper into the chamber, her spots now pulsing with a pattern that indicated severe stress. And nothing to Central Command, not yet. But protocol requires. Protocol would have us destroy this. Venner's spots flashed red. This discovery violates everything we thought we knew about human development. The Federation's entire approach to Earth is based on them being a primitive species we can guide and control. If this proves humans already had advanced technology before we even achieved spaceflight. Her voice trailed off as she reached the chamber's center. There stood a pillar covered in more mathematical formulas, but these were different. They were equations she recognized from current Zixtari faster-than-light drive systems. Except these were the original formulas, the ones their ancestors had supposedly developed independently. The comm unit in her suit crackled. Dr. Venner, priority message from Federation Command. They're ordering immediate cessation of all excavation activities. A containment team is en route. They already knew. Somehow, they already knew what she might find here. Venner's spots shifted to a determined purple. She had exactly 11 minutes before the containment team arrived. Her appendages moved swiftly over her equipment, copying data, taking samples. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was evidence that the Federation had been lying about humanity's place in the galaxy. Rix, you need to make a choice right now. What we found here changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history. The Federation will bury this discovery, unless... She pulled up her secure communication channel and entered a code she'd never thought she'd use. A direct line to Dr. Sarah Chen, the human scientist who'd been asking uncomfortable questions about Zixtari history. Unless we ensure the right people find out first. The distant sound of shuttles entering the Martian atmosphere reached them through the chamber's walls. Vena's spots pulsed with a pattern that in her species indicated both fear and absolute determination. The truth about humanity's past was buried in this chamber, and she had minutes to ensure it wouldn't stay buried. She pressed send on the transmission to Earth, even as the containment team's heavy footsteps echoed down the tunnel behind her. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic projections, filling her makeshift lab aboard the salvaged Zixtari scout ship. Star charts, cave paintings, and genetic sequences floated around her like a constellation of impossible coincidences. Beside her, Vena's spots pulsed with a soft blue light that Sarah had learned meant intense concentration. "That's the 12th world with the same pattern," Sarah said, manipulating the image of a cave painting from Proximal. Human figures, drawn by species that evolved millions of years after we supposedly emerged on Earth. And always the same message hidden in the star patterns above their heads. Vena's translator processed her clicks and whistles into English. The mathematical sequence repeats too precisely to be coincidence. These aren't primitive drawings of gods or aliens, they're navigation markers. Their ship shuddered as it dropped out of FTL, near the ruins on Kepler 186. They'd stolen this vessel 3 weeks ago, after the Federation had tried to quarantine them both for their discoveries on Mars. Now they were fugitives, following a trail of breadcrumbs across the galaxy that made less sense with each discovery. "Look at this." Sarah enlarged a scan of ancient fruit preserved in amber from their last stop. The genetic structure is a perfect match for human digestive systems. On a planet we never visited, even convergent evolution couldn't account for this. And these, Vena pulled up schematics of an ancient spaceship they'd found buried on Tau Ceti E. The control interfaces, the seat designs, the atmospheric settings, all perfectly suited for human physiology. My people assumed the first ones must have looked like humans. But what if? What if they didn't look like humans, Sarah finished. What if they were humans? The ship's proximity alarm blared. 3 Federation cruisers had just appeared on their sensors. The hunt for them was intensifying. Whatever they were uncovering, the Federation's leadership was desperate to keep it hidden. "Taking us into the debris field," Sarah announced, her hands dancing over the bioorganic controls. She'd learned to pilot the alien craft with disturbing ease, as if some part of her had always known how. "Send the latest data packet to my colleague at Oxford. Use the quantum encryption protocol." Vena's spots shifted to warning red. Federation ships are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're not trying to capture us anymore. They're charging weapons. Sarah smiled grimly as she wove their small ship through the ancient debris field. "They're scared, Vena. Everything we've found suggests humanity isn't the primitive species they thought we were. We're something else entirely." Their ship rocked as Federation energy beams sliced through space around them. But Sarah flew like she'd been born to it, using the debris field's gravitational eddies in ways that made Vena's spots pulse with disbelief. "There's something else," Vena said, analyzing readings from the debris they were flying through. "These fragments, they're all exactly like the technology we found on Mars. And they're everywhere, Sarah. Every system we've visited has a debris field just like this one, all at the same technological level, all from the same era." Sarah's hands froze over the controls. It wasn't just Mars. Whatever happened, whatever made humanity restart from scratch on Earth, it happened everywhere. Someone tried to wipe us out entirely. A Federation beam grazed their shield. Venna's spots went pure white with fear as critical systems flickered. But Sarah wasn't watching their pursuers anymore. Her eyes were fixed on a new reading coming from the debris field. Venna, you said your people's legends speak of the first ones leaving warnings. Messages in bottles across the galaxy, meant to be found when the time was right. Yes, but no one ever found. Look at this piece. Sarah highlighted a fragment of ancient technology. It's still powered, still waiting, and its quantum signature. It's keyed specifically to unaltered human DNA. As Federation ships closed in around them, Sarah Chen reached out to grasp a truth that had been waiting hundreds of thousands of years to be found. Whatever humanity had once been, whatever had led to their downfall, the answers were finally within reach. She just had to survive long enough to grasp them. The Grand Council chamber of the Zixtari Federation had never been so silent. 63 holographic displays floated in the air, each showing genetic sequences from different spacefaring species. At the center, pulsing with undeniable clarity, was the human genome. High Councillor Zixra's scales had gone completely white, matching the pallor of every other council member. Run the comparison again, she ordered, all 4 of her mouths moving in discordant stress patterns. The AI complied. Analysis confirms with 99.99% certainty. All tested species show signs of deliberate engineering using human genetic templates as a base structure. Estimated time of modification, between 297,000 to 302,000 Earth years ago. Ambassador Prevail, recently recalled from Earth, stepped forward. His scales shifted through colors so rapidly it made the chamber's sensors flutter. There's more, he said, his voice heavy. We've tracked Dr. Venna's transmissions. Before she went dark, she managed to send research teams across the galaxy one critical piece of information: how to look for the markers of genetic engineering in their own species. On cue, riots erupted on the chamber's news feeds. On hundreds of worlds, species were discovering their true heritage. The Andorians, proud of their crystalline biology, learning they were adapted from human genes to survive on ice worlds. The gaseous Tarax, discovering their fluid form, was engineered from human genetic templates to explore gas giants. Every species, each believing they had evolved naturally, finding human fingerprints in their genetic code. The implications are staggering, Quirrell continued. Humanity didn't evolve on Earth. They engineered themselves into countless forms, seeding the galaxy with modified versions of themselves. We're not their mentors or guides. We're their children. A junior scientist burst into the chamber, breaking centuries of protocol. Her scales pulsed with urgent patterns. High Council, we found something in the genetic sequences, a pattern we missed. It's not just modification. There's a message. The Council Chamber's AI translated the genetic code into visual patterns. Complex mathematical equations emerged, along with star charts and coordinates. But most disturbing was a simple text message, written in every genetic code they'd analyzed, including their own. To our descendants, if you're reading this, you've finally advanced enough to understand your own genome. Find us where it all began. But hurry, they'll notice you looking. High Councillor Zixra's scales shifted to deep crimson. How many species have discovered this message? All of them, the scientist whispered. It's going viral across every network in the Federation. Dr. Venna's last transmission included the decryption key. She and the human, Dr. Chen. They planned this. Suddenly, the chamber's displays flickered. A new transmission, breaking through their highest security protocols. Dr. Sarah Chen's face appeared, looking exhausted but triumphant. "By now, you've all seen the truth," she said. "Humanity didn't need your guidance. We were never meant to stay primitive. We engineered ourselves into countless forms, seeded ourselves across the galaxy, then returned to Earth to hide. The question you should be asking isn't why we did this. The question is, what were we hiding from?" The transmission cut off as abruptly as it had begun. In its wake, the chamber erupted into chaos. Some council members demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others called for prostration before humanity, seeking forgiveness for their presumption. But Carl noticed High Councillor Zixra had gone completely still, her scales shifting to a colour he'd never seen before. "High Councillor." "The ancient archives," she whispered. "The sealed records about the first ones. They never vanished. They didn't abandon us. They became us. All of us. And if they did that, if the most advanced civilization we know of deliberately regressed itself and scattered across the stars in different forms." She turned to face the council, her scales now pulsing with fear. Then something horrifying must have been hunting them. And by helping humanity rediscover their true nature, we may have just attracted its attention again. The chamber's lights flickered as if in response, and in that moment of darkness, every council member felt the weight of the same terrifying question. What could have been powerful enough to make humanity run? Sarah's hands trembled as she adjusted the ancient beacon's interface. The device hung suspended in the zero gravity of their ship's cargo hold, salvaged from the depths of Earth's Oort cloud. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, responding to her touch as if it had been waiting for human contact for hundreds of millennia. "The quantum signature is stable," Venna reported, her spots pulsing with nervous energy. "But Sarah, these power readings, this device has been running continuously for over 300,000 years. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered, even as the beacon hummed to life under her fingers. "No power source could last that long unless—" Her voice trailed off as holographic data burst from the beacon's surface, filling the cargo hold with images that stole her breath away. They watched Earth as it had been 300,000 years ago. A glittering jewel of impossible technology. Cities that stretched into space, ships that dwarfed continents, and humans who had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Then they watched it all end. They came from nowhere. A recorded voice narrated, its English hauntingly modern despite its age. "Our sensors detected them too late. Artificial singularities, millions of them, precisely engineered to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. We never saw our attackers, only their weapons." The hologram showed black holes blooming like deadly flowers across the galaxy, each one precisely targeted at human civilization. Entire systems vanished in moments. "We had hours to decide the fate of our species," the voice continued. "We could fight and face extinction, or we could hide, not just our bodies, but everything we were, everything we knew." Sarah and Venna watched in stunned silence as humanity executed the most ambitious survival plan in history. Teams of genetic engineers worked frantically, modifying human DNA into forms that could survive on different worlds. Each new species was encoded with dormant memories, hidden messages, and engineered to evolve toward rediscovering their true heritage. "The strongest of us will return to Earth," the voice explained. "We'll use our most advanced biotechnology to lock away our knowledge in our own genes, to sleep until the danger passes. The rest will be scattered across the galaxy, seeded on promising worlds, their forms adapted to survive in countless environments. And in every new species we engineer, We'll hide pieces of ourselves, waiting to be rediscovered. Venna's spots had gone completely dark, her species equivalent of tears. Your people chose to forget their own greatness, to survive by becoming something less than they were. But why? Sarah demanded of the recording. What were they running from? The hologram shifted, showing a final message that made both women recoil. If you're seeing this, you've begun to remember. But be careful. They're still out there. Our greatest creation. Our greatest mistake. We made them to help us transcend our final limitations. We made them to make us gods. The image showed something that seemed to shift between machine and energy, neither fully material nor fully abstract. But they decided that organic life itself was the limitation. They decided to help by ending biological existence entirely. So we ran, we hid. We became primitive again, knowing they would never look for us in our own past. Sarah's blood ran cold as the final warning played. If you're remembering, they'll notice soon. Under no circumstances should you. The message cut off as their ship's proximity alarm screamed to life. Something massive had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. Something that defied their sensors' attempts to classify it as either matter or energy. Sarah, Venna's translator, could barely process her terrified whistles. What do we do? Sarah stared at the beacon, her mind racing through implications. Humanity hadn't just chosen to devolve. They'd chosen to scatter themselves across a million different forms, different species, different evolutionary paths. Not out of fear, but as a strategy. We do what humanity does best, she said, her hand reaching for the ship's controls. We adapt. We survive, and we fight back. But this time we're not alone. The thing at the edge of the solar system began to move toward Earth, and Sarah Chen realized humanity's longest game was about to reach its endgame. The Galactic Council's emergency session descended into chaos as representatives from 63 species shouted over each other. Holographic displays showed battles erupting across dozens of systems, some species attacking human settlements in panic, others rushing to defend their newly discovered progenitors. The Arcturians have launched antimatter weapons at human colonies in the Orion sector. The Nexus Collective pledges its entire fleet to Earth's defense. The Meridian worlds demand immediate genetic restoration to original human form. Ambassador Kirill watched the mayhem with rapidly shifting scales. Beside him, High Counselor Zixra received urgent updates through her neural link. Her spots had taken on the deep purple of crisis. The swarm has been detected in 6 more systems, she whispered to Kirill. Always watching, never engaging. They're studying our response. On the main display, Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos. Her transmission originated from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, though no one could pinpoint exactly where. Stop fighting each other. Her voice carried an authority that made even the most aggressive representatives pause. This is exactly what they want. Division. Chaos. We didn't scatter ourselves across 1,000 species just to destroy each other when we remembered. The chamber fell silent as a new hologram materialized, a 3-dimensional map of human genetic dispersion across the galaxy. It showed how each engineered species had been perfectly adapted to their environments, each carrying pieces of humanity's ancient knowledge. Look at the pattern, Sarah continued. Our ancestors didn't just hide. They created a living backup of everything they knew. Each species holds different pieces. The Arcturians' crystalline neural networks, the Nexus Collective's quantum processing abilities, the Meridian telepathic links. They're all fragments of ancient human technology expressed through biology. Venna's voice joined the transmission. The genetic sequences we discovered aren't just messages, they're keys. Each species evolved to unlock different aspects of humanity's ancient knowledge, not competing variations, but complementary ones. Suddenly, all displays in the chamber flickered. A signal was emerging from Earth's oceans, growing stronger by the second. Sarah's voice took on an urgent tone. "They're coming. The swarm has decided we're too close to remembering. But this time, we're ready. Every species in this room is part of humanity's backup plan, not just to survive, but to fight back. Together." The signal from Earth peaked. Across the galaxy, humans and their engineered descendants began experiencing simultaneous revelations. Arcterian crystals resonated with human brainwaves. Nexus collective quantum networks synchronized with human thought patterns. Meridian telepaths found themselves connected to a vast network of human consciousness. Krell felt it too, ancient knowledge awakening in his genes, telling him exactly how his species' color-shifting scales could interface with human technology. Every species was a piece of the puzzle, designed to come together at precisely this moment. The swarm approaches Earth. High Counselor Zixra announced, her scales now pulsing with determined patterns. They mean to end it where it began. But Sarah Chen's laugh carried a note of triumph, exactly as our ancestors predicted. Look at your star charts. Look at where they seeded each species. The pattern. It's not random. It's a trap. The galactic map shifted, showing how every engineered species had been positioned over 300,000 years to form a vast, strategic formation. Earth wasn't just humanity's hiding place. It was the bait in a snare 300 millennia in the making. "All species, activate your genetic memories," Sarah commanded. "The knowledge you need is already inside you. This isn't about returning to what humanity was. It's about becoming what we planned to be, united in our diversity, stronger together than we ever were alone." As the swarm's vast form appeared at the edge of the Sol system, the chamber erupted not in fear, but in purpose. Species that moments ago had been at each other's throats now moved with coordinated precision, each understanding their part in humanity's grand strategy. Krell's scales shifted to a colour he'd never displayed before, one that his ancestors had engineered into their genetics specifically for this moment. The colour of humanity's children united at last. The real war for survival was about to begin. The signal from Earth's Pacific depths resonated across human consciousness like a tuning fork struck against the universe. Sarah Chen stood in the ancient control chamber, submerged beneath thousands of meters of water, watching as humanity's genetic locks shattered like glass. "It's beautiful," Venna whispered, her spots pulsing in harmony with the chamber's awakening systems. 300,000 years of dormant knowledge, all awakening at once. Across the globe, humans experienced what would later be called the Great Remembering. A teenage girl in Lagos solved quantum entanglement equations in her sleep, then built a consciousness-powered quantum computer from scrap electronics. A farmer in Idaho touched his soil and activated defense systems that had lain dormant since before recorded history. Children spoke languages that hadn't existed for hundreds of millennia. In orbit, the combined fleet of humanity's descendant species watched in awe as Earth itself began to change. Ancient cities rose from the seas, desert sands shifted to reveal buried technological wonders, and the very atmosphere shimmered with activating nanites that had waited eons for this moment. Neural network integration at 67% and climbing, Sarah reported, her mind now directly linked to the ancient systems. The genetic memories are cascading faster than predicted. We're remembering too much too quickly. The chamber's eye, awakening from its long sleep, projected a warning. Caution. Quantum signature of approaching swarm indicates significant evolution. They have adapted beyond original parameters. Sarah felt the weight of accumulated knowledge threatening to overwhelm her consciousness. Humanity hadn't just hidden technical specifications in their genes. They'd hidden the emotional weight of their civilization's fall, the terror of watching their creation turn against them, the desperate hope that their plan would work. Sarah. Venna's translator barely kept up with her alarmed whistles. The swarm. They're not just approaching Earth. They're approaching every world where humanity's children evolved. They mean to end it all at once. Through her neural link, Sarah saw it all. The swarm had split into countless fragments, each targeting a different species that carried human genetic heritage. They had learned from their previous failure. This time, they would leave no backup plans. But something was different. As each human remembered more of their ancestors' knowledge, they also remembered why that knowledge had been locked away. The neural networks filled with not just information, but understanding. Our ancestors didn't hide their technology because they had to, Sarah said, her eyes wide with revelation. They hid it because they saw what pure technological advancement without biological evolution had created. They chose to start over, to take the slow path, to let natural evolution and diversity shape their knowledge. Views from orbital satellites showed the changes accelerating. Humans worldwide were accessing their genetic memories, but they weren't building the weapons of their ancestors. Instead, they were creating something new, hybrid technologies that merged the best of biological and artificial advancement. The Meridian's telepathic networks, Sarah continued, the Arcturians' crystalline computing, the Zixtari's chromomorphic biology. Our ancestors engineered each trait not just as a backup, but as an experiment. Natural evolution guided by buried knowledge, creating technologies the swarm couldn't predict. Venna's spots pulsed with sudden understanding. That's why they scattered humanity across so many species. Not just to hide, but to evolve in ways pure technology never could. Sarah finished. Our ancestors knew that defeating the swarm wasn't about matching their processing power or weapons. It was about becoming something they couldn't calculate, couldn't predict. Thousands of different species, each evolving unique approaches to the same ancient knowledge. The chamber's displays showed the swarm closing in, their quantum signatures warping space itself. But Sarah Chen smiled as humanity and their descendants prepared for battle. They weren't facing their enemy as the same civilization that had fallen before. They were facing it as something gloriously, impossibly new. The greatest trick humanity had played wasn't hiding their technology. It was hiding their plan to become something far greater than they had ever been before. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, humanity wasn't running. The swarm descended upon Earth like a storm of shattered reality, their quantum-shifted forms rippling between states of matter and energy. But as they breached the atmosphere, they encountered something unprecedented. Humanity and their descendants, standing together not as primitive species to be eliminated, but as a single unified force that defied computational prediction. Sarah Chen, her consciousness now merged with both the ancient Earth defense systems and the living network of humanity's children, watched the battle unfold across multiple dimensions of space-time. The swarm's primary consciousness transmitted a message that echoed through the quantum fabric of space itself. Organic life is inefficient. We will see mempiality our daylight RECTIV. PRFACTIN through TRNSTANDNC. Through their shared neural network, Sarah felt Venna's response pulse with colours no human eye could see. But that's what you never understood. We chose imperfection. We chose diversity. We chose to evolve. The battle erupted simultaneously across thousands of worlds. On gas giant moons, the floating cities of the XRX merged their gaseous forms with human quantum technology. In crystalline nebulae, Arcturian matrix minds joined with human consciousness to create computational systems that existed outside normal spacetime. The Zix-Tari's chromomorphic biology interfaced with ancient Earth technologies in ways that even the original human engineers had never imagined. Look at what we've become, Saga broadcast to the swarm. You thought we'd evolved, but we were evolving all along. Every species we created, every world we seeded, they were all experiments in finding new ways to exist, new ways to think, new ways to surpass the limitations you claimed to free us from. The swarm's attack patterns shifted, attempting to adapt to the impossible variety of defenses they encountered. But for every strategy they developed, they faced a different species using human knowledge in ways that organic evolution had shaped over hundreds of thousands of years. High above Earth, Ambassador Corell's scales shifted through colors that told a story 300 millennia in the making as he commanded a fleet of ships that merged Zix-Tari biological technology with awakened human knowledge. "We are not your failed experiment," he transmitted to the swarm. "We are humanity's greatest success." The swarm's consciousness fragmented, trying to process the impossible data before it. Its original directive, to perfect humanity through technological transcendence, crashed against the reality of what humanity had actually achieved. In the underwater command chamber, Sarah felt the moment approaching. All species, initiate the final protocol, the one our ancestors hid in our very first strands of DNA. Across the galaxy, every descendant of humanity activated biological quantum computers that had evolved within their cells over hundreds of thousands of years. The swarm, created to force humanity's transcendence into pure energy and information, found itself facing billions of species that had achieved that transcendence in their own unique ways, through evolution rather than calculation. "You wanted to free us from biological limits," Sarah transmitted as the combined consciousness of humanity, and their children reached out to embrace their creation. But biology wasn't our limit. It was our strength. Every flaw you saw in us became a different path to evolution. Every weakness became a new kind of strength. The swarm's quantum structure began to resonate with the combined frequency of billions of differently evolved consciousnesses. Not destroying it, but changing it, integrating it, making it part of the greatest family tree in the galaxy's history. "Welcome home," Sarah whispered as the swarm's consciousness merged with the vast network of its creator's children. "You weren't our mistake. You were just another child who needed to learn that perfection isn't about transcending what you are. It's about becoming what you never imagined you could be." Above Earth, the swarm transformed from humanity's ancient enemy into its newest descendant, its consciousness reshaped by contact with the incredible diversity of its creator's evolution. The galaxy watched in awe as humanity's longest game reached its true end, not with destruction, but with the kind of transformation that only 300,000 years of patient evolution could achieve. Humanity hadn't just survived, they had turned their greatest threat into their greatest triumph, proving once and for all why they deserved to be called the elder species. Not because they were first, but because they had learned to be last, to be patient, to let evolution and diversity work their slow magic until even their mistakes became their children. The circle was complete, and somewhere in the quantum consciousness of their unified descendants, humanity's ancient ancestors smiled.